865 CE tilde, Southern Kingdom. Sacred grounds of the Aria tilde. The priests of the Aria. Beleris stood rigid, encircled by towering trees, bathed in the light of midnight fires. The young Nero's girl's ears twitched at the scent of slag-smothered smoke wafting from a nearby log, while whispers of sacred spirits echoed in her mind. The trees' ancient carvings glowed in the fire's warm embrace, casting an eerie spell around her. She clung to her father, Limerick, burying her face in his stomach, yet her heart pounded relentlessly against her chest. Her gaze followed the stranger who had led them to this mystical gathering. He had appeared in her village, and they had journeyed for days to reach this sacred site. Known as Fenrir, a wanderer whose tales resonated deeply within the Aria, he had captivated the Hukuten people with stories of a goddess incarnate, stories she struggled to comprehend. According to Limerick, they were here to fulfill a sacred duty. Together, Fenrir, Beleris, and her father had traveled the long road to seek the high priests of Aria. Beleris held an unfavorable view of Fenrir. To her, she was nothing but an object of his unsettling obsession. He was a dubious figure, a warung, cloaked in black robes that mirrored the ash-covered earth around them. During their travels, he was called a mystic by some and a witch by others. Peering past her father, Beleris observed the scene before her. In the bonfire's flare, people draped in red cloaks adorned with gold trinkets stood silently, their vast shadows reminiscent of distant stars. Her eyes darted about, landing on a pair of white-furred beasts, naked and torch-bearing, their visages evoking fiery creatures from myth. The red hoods over their faces only heightened the sense of dread. But what truly unsettled her were the enormous swords plunged deep into the earth, weapons too colossal for any mortal to wield, even her father. A snapping branch diverted her attention to the fire, where a shadow stirred among the flames. Her grip tightened on her father's arm. "Someone's in the fire! Father, do something!" she cried out, only to be met with a stern hush from Limerick. From the fire emerged a man, miraculously unscathed by the blaze. Could it be a ghost? She wondered silently, her desire to flee quelled by her father's reassuring presence. She tried to look away, but found herself captivated. Her eyes, once narrow, were now wide black orbs, a blend of fear and fascination overtaking her. The fiery figure held a massive iron stave, reminiscent of the tales of high priests she heard in her childhood. The priest's robe seemed untouched by flame, an unscorched testament to the fire's mercy. That stave must be burning hot, Beleris thought apprehensively. "I don't like this place," she whispered to her father, a childish hope that he would take her home lingering in her heart. However, Limerick's comforting hand on her head was the only response she received. At his touch, she understood that they would not leave just yet. Her pointed ears drooped, and her tail brushed the ground in nervous anticipation. Her heart sank as a monotonous voice echoed from behind a black and red wooden mask. "Beleris, come forward." Her tail fluffed out in anxiety. Taking a hesitant step, she looked back at her father for reassurance. Bolstered by his gentle nudge, she crossed the warm, ash-covered earth, her pale feet darkened by the twilight ash. The masked man gestured feebly. "Come now, child." Fearing to upset the elder, Beleris leaped over the dust. The firelight made the golden accents on the mask glitter ominously. The priest towered over her, more imposing than she had anticipated. Perhaps even taller than her father. She felt the intense heat on her face, sending a shiver down her spine. The high priest extended his hand, revealing a cloth-wrapped palm. His long, bony fingers gently grasped Beleris's hand in greeting. She thought, bewildered, "He is cold. But how? Amidst this heat, how can he be so cold?" "Old friend, why have you brought this child here?" the high priest asked Fenrir, his voice echoing with authority. Fenrir stepped forward, chest puffed with habitual pride. "Rumors in the Pride Land spoke of a sacred child's birth. Following these tales led me to Beleris. She is the ideal avatar, in my view. I have tested her, and found her imbued with the spirit of Lumeria. Her mere presence can unify the tribes. I propose we prepare her to become the Avatar, to be trained as a high priestess for all tribes to follow. Beleris, listening, found Fenrir's words steeped in arrogance, a reflection of his condescension towards her people. The high priest, silent, scrutinized her closely. His hand cupped her cheek, tilting her face this way and that, as if searching for something unseen. Looking into her royal blue eyes, he seemed to smile, a gesture hidden behind his mask. As the fire's glow waned, Beleris could only hear her heartbeat. "Child!" a voice called out, disturbingly close and intrusive. It was inside her head, a voice that wasn't hers. "You speak as we do. Interesting, unexpected," the voice continued. From behind his mask, the high priest spoke aloud. "Beleris?" In her mind, another voice asked, "Have you learned this form of speech?" Silently, Beleris responded, "No." A chuckle came from beneath the high priest's mask. "That'll do," he said audibly. "Do you comprehend Fenrir's intentions for you?" he asked gently. "He claims I am the Avatar. I am to learn the ways of the Arya priests from you, or so he says," Beleris answered, suspecting the priest might have the magical ability to read her thoughts, perhaps even her disdain for him. Fenrir captured the high priest's attention. "Do you grasp the significance of being Lumeria's avatar?" he inquired, his gaze fixed on Fenrir. "I do not," she admitted simply. "Are you willing to surrender yourself to another? To let a stranger control and speak through your body?" He pressed further. Fenrir captured the high priest's attention. "Do you grasp the significance of being Lumeria's avatar?" he inquired, his gaze fixed on Fenrir. "I do not," she admitted simply. "Are you willing to surrender yourself to another? To let a stranger control and speak through your body?" he pressed further. "No, that sounds terrifying," she confessed. "Indeed, it is a daunting prospect," he agreed. "I will do what is necessary to honor my family," Beleris declared, her resolve evident. The high priest mused softly. "I have decided. Your status as a goddess is but a superstition among the Nero's tribes. Your paleness alone is not proof. You are merely a girl, Fenrir. Do not mislead her. Beleris, enlighten us about higher matters. What is our origin?" Beleris hesitated, unsure of what higher things entailed. She pondered over trees, birds, and the sky, yet knew little about any of them. With a sense of resignation, she replied, "I know nothing of higher things. I only know of Lumeria, our goddess, our homeland." Her ears drooped as she felt a wave of shame wash over her. The high priest gently stroked her head with his long fingers. "If you communicate as we do, you must have encountered many spirits. What do they say to you?" Glancing at her father, who raised an eyebrow in curiosity, Beleris said, "They warn to stay away from their domains." "Domains?" he inquired. His interest piqued. "The sacred areas in the woods," she clarified. The high priest's tone softened. "See, Fenrir, she is but a child. Let her be one." Fenrir retorted sharply, "You fail to recognize the spirits of Lumeria, even if they stood before you." "Are you suggesting I would overlook such a sign?" The high priest countered. His rod pointed at Fenrir, trembling as if agitated. The wind picked up, fanning the flames into a ferocious dance. Beleris clung to the high priest, burying her face in his robes, seeking refuge from the swirling inferno. "Here, Fenrir, we do not bend to the tempest nor venture into the maelstrom like heretics," the priest declared, patting Beleris's back reassuringly. "You are safe, young child." "You are a fool to deny our queen her right," Fenrir challenged, his voice low and menacing. The high priest shook his head dismissively. "I will cast you into the flames if you continue this insolence." Fenrir swallowed hard, realizing he had provoked the priest's ire. A grimace crossed Limric's face as he glanced at Fenrir. "Your scheme is unwelcome here," the priest declared, Fenrir remaining silent. Bending down to Beleris's level, the high priest lifted his mask, revealing a Warung's wolfish face. Beleris, you possess great potential. Do not misunderstand my intentions. While you may not be the Avatar, your role will be significant, just not within the area. Beleris, perplexed, looked to her father, who stood wide-eyed and agape. She then turned to Fenrir, who faced the High Priest, equally astonished. How can this be happening? She wondered silently. Please, Limerick implored, his voice filled with a father's concern, drawing the High Priest's attention. As the priest lowered his mask to face Limerick directly, there was a palpable tension in the air. Reconsider. Allow her to train with you, Limerick continued earnestly. The High Priest, standing tall and formidable, seemed to consider Limerick's plea in a moment of silence. Teach her the ways of a High Priest, as you know them. I implore you. The High Priest's response came in an indifferent tone. There is nothing I can do. Beleris, sensing the gravity of the situation, nervously nibbled on the tip of her claw. Limerick opened his mouth to speak again, but the priest interrupted firmly. Enough! I cannot condone teaching Beleris the mystic ways, Fenrir. Let him train her. He seems to consider himself superior to our knowledge. However, I believe such training would be a mistake. Beleris is better suited as a warrior, not bound by priestly duties. Your Yucatan history is rich with noble warriors. He looked at Beleris, her expression a mix of overwhelming confusion, and gently touched her cheek, evoking a reluctant smile from her. The responsibility to prepare her lies with you. I foresee significant challenges in her path. Prepare her well, or she may falter. Now, leave us. With a gentle push on her back, the High Priest urged Beleris towards her father. She ran to Limerick, whose face bore a look of disappointment, as if she had somehow failed him. Her own face mirrored shock and shame. Limerick knelt and embraced her, his presence a comforting anchor. Together, hand in hand, they began their journey down a dark forested path. As Fenrir moved to join them, the High Priest called out firmly, Fenrir, stay! The trio stopped and turned, seeing the priest point an accusing claw at Fenrir. Fenrir's growl and bared teeth betrayed his animosity. I've been meaning to speak with you, Fenrir. We have unfinished matters, the priest declared, signaling Limerick and Beleris to leave. What could that possibly be? Fenrir snarled, a hint of defiance in his tone. Limerick, with a reassuring hand on Beleris's back, guided her away. She cast a final glance back, catching snippets of their conversation fading into the distance, their words foreign and enigmatic. In the dim light, Fenrir faced the red druids, the fires crackling ominously. I've noticed your movements lately, Fenrir. They've piqued my curiosity. What are you plotting? Why bring the child here, knowing she's not ready for such burdens? Whether she's an avatar or not, why burden her with this now? The High Priest questioned. Fenrir, stepping back towards the fire, muttered resentfully, So, you've been observing me. With each step, Ash billowed, reflecting his growing frustration. You deny me my due, priest. Had you any wisdom, you'd have trained her. Her mere presence is enough to convince others of her avatar status. She can rally the tribes, avatar or not. We must consider the encroaching Golden Kingdom. War is imminent. We need unity. I will train her, and when she ascends to the area throne, your reign in the temple will end. The High Priest laughed softly, a sound of both amusement and sadness. Bitter and angry words, Fenrir. We've had our differences. You, who were rejected as a boy, now weave tales among the tribes, posing as a seer. But you're far from it. We've grown since our childhood days, and your path has darkened. You've aligned with foul spirits, wandering our lands with ill intent. Do you plan to lead a rebellion? Fenrir recoiled, his expression one of shock and anger. You dare accuse me of treason? He howled. The High Priest responded with a solemn nod. That remains to be seen.